From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez, and this is From the South. Five social leaders were killed in Colombia on Thursday, bringing the total number of murders of leaders to 24 in the last month. Ancisar Cifuentes is the latest victim, killed at gunpoint in the municipality of Chaparral, Tolima. With a minute of silence, the bishops of the Episcopal Conference rejected the assassination of social leaders across the country and said the communities are facing a humanitarian crisis. Social organizations are demanding the government to dismantle paramilitarism, the main threat to leaders in the country. They also asked for a bilateral ceasefire with the National Liberation Army, or ELN, as well as safety guarantees for the communities involved in the implementation of peace. People have been displaced in areas like Catatumbo, Cauca, Valle del Cauca, Chocó, and Nariño.
I asked the national government to provide us with sufficient protection, and to UNP, because with the different threats the different armed groups have made, my life is in danger.
Still in Colombia, the ELN remembered the 54th anniversary of its foundation as it continues to hold peace talks with the government. In a Telesur exclusive interview, ELN delegates spoke about the importance of reaching an agreement of peace that the country needs.
The ELN has been fighting for years to find a way out of this conflict. That's why our delegation keeps the dialogue alive among the resistance. We haven't signed agreements, but we will continue trying to find a political way out of this conflict, to end political violence, and to make the urgent basic changes needed to create a peaceful, resistant culture.
Supporters of the former Ecuadorian President Rafael Correa marched in capital city Quito to reject the arrest order against him and what they see as a campaign of persecution led by the current government. Heavy police presence stopped thousands of protesters from marching all the way to the presidential palace in central Quito and gathered at Plaza Domingo, Santo Domingo. Supporters also rejected the government's decision to recall its ambassador in Bolivia and to suspend plans to send a new diplomat to Venezuela. The decision was made after Presidents Evo Morales and Nicolás Maduro criticized the National Court order to arrest former President Correa.
This has been an important afternoon. The people of Quito have taken their outrage to the streets because they elected what used to be a government of the people, but is now a government of the oligarchies. Because this government was chosen to continue the citizens' revolution, and what they have done is betray the citizens' revolution. This government was chosen to continue building hope, and what it is doing is lend itself to powerful groups and oligarchies. A government that was elected with the support of millions of Ecuadorians who believe in the citizens' revolution, but who are now persecuted and imprisoned. This is a government that now seeks to prosecute Rafael Correa. These are the reasons why the people now say, enough. We have just started this great protest across the country, a march to take back our homeland and to continue building the citizens' revolution.
We are here for our nation's dignity, a nation that through the citizens' revolution and thanks to Rafael Correa learned to fight for their rights. We are offended and we are angry about the return of a neoliberal system that is taking us backwards. We thank all Latin America countries for their solidarity. We will not be defeated. Political persecution has a limit, and that limit is the people. We have shown that tonight here in Quito.
Still in Ecuador, President Lenín Moreno is pressing the Union of South American Nations, or UNASUR, to hand over its headquarters building in Quito as uncertainty over the bloc's future continues. The UNASUR building was ceded to the countries that make it up, Lenín said. We are going to ask UNASUR to return that building so it can be better used. We are not opposed to integration, but it hasn't worked because of disrespect by others, Moreno said in a series of tweets. The Frente Guazú political party in Paraguay has expressed its full support for former President Fernando Lugo after the ruling Colorado party threatened to persecute him for contempt of the Constitution. The right-wing party claims that Lugo bypassed constitutional rules when he failed to call another former president, Nicanor Duarte, to be sworn in as a senator last Saturday. The Frente Guazú said Lugo never wavered in his respect and defense of the Constitution. If convicted, Lugo could face up to 10 years in prison. The CARICOM heads of government are in Montego Bay, Jamaica, on the last day of their 39th Heads of Government meeting. Leaders have discussed the importance of regional integration through the single market, which would allow free movement of skilled workers throughout the Caribbean. Prime Minister of Jamaica, Andrew Holness, who is also CARICOM's current chair, said the region needs to stand together against the unfair practice of implementing global compliance standards.
Small countries are now burdened with having to put in place systems of compliance, whether it is with the OECD, whether it is with the European Union, whether it is with the United States. But as I said earlier, our response is not to shirk from the responsibility of global compliance, but to ask for fairness and support in developing and implementing the systems. Because at the end of the day, our small economies must stand up as examples of transparency, accountability, and stand strong against any hint of corruption.
Cuba's new president, Miguel Díaz-Canel, is in Jamaica for his first official visit to the island. He is there as a special guest of CARICOM and has been meeting with the regional heads during their three-day conference. He also had time for an official meeting with the Prime Minister of Jamaica and the current chair of CARICOM, Andrew Holness. We'll take a short break now, but join us again after a video from our multimedia team.
But unfortunately, Jason's school did not allow him to give his valedictorian speech. For some reason, his school, in a country where freedom of speech is a constitutional right, in the city of Frederick Douglass, turned his moment of triumph into a time of sorrow and pain.
First, I would like to acknowledge that I am the first African-American valedictorian in UPrep history. I say that not to brag, but to emphasize the importance of this. Hopefully there will be many more after me, and I want it to be known that this isn't impossible and it can be done. First, I would like to thank my mom and dad. Anybody that really knows me knows my mom, and she don't play. She made sure I went to school and I had what I needed. She made sure that I had good grades, and she always told every teacher, if it's a problem, then call me. Whenever I got in trouble at school, I got in trouble at home. And I guess looking back, I can appreciate that because it taught me actions have consequences. If she wasn't like that, then I probably wouldn't be giving a speech right now. As a matter of fact, I wasn't going to give this speech at all. But then I realized something. I realized that this speech is about more than just me. It means a lot to everybody that I mean a lot to. And I'm here as the UPrep 2018 valedictorian to tell you that you couldn't break me, and I'm still here. I'm still here strong.
Welcome back. Social sectors in El Salvador marched to the Legislative Assembly to reject a bill that could privatize water and to demand its protection.
Hundreds of Salvadorians march in the streets of San Salvador to demand that the new water law that leaves water in hands of the private sector does not get approved.
We call on people not to be fooled by right-wing politicians. They want to fool the people by saying this isn't privatization, when they talk about privatization that includes rivers, lakes and rain. We're fighting against that so that we are not robbed of these natural goods that are so important for the people of El Salvador.
The march also denounced the intentions of the presidential candidate for the Arena Party, Carlos Calleja, who presented a proposal described by the social movements as an electoral maneuver.
The previous legislature should have ratified that reform, but the Arena Party did not give their votes.
The entrance to parliament was blocked by anti-riot agents. A group of FMLN congressmen managed to gain entry to deliver a letter to the legislators of the Committee of the Environment and Climate Change, in which they reject privatization.
This law would give 80% of decision-making authority to private sectors, against the 20% that would represent the interests of the state. Clearly, this is privatization.
The members of the National Alliance Against Privatization proposed that the National Authority of Water must include communities and other sectors linked to the protection of water to participate, and not only the private sector.
Thousands of people took to the streets in Argentina to once again reject the massive layoffs in the state news agency Telam, ordered by the Minister of Communication, Eduardo Lombardi. Political parties, social movements, and human rights organizations also joined the demonstration in capital city Buenos Aires that demanded Lombardi to reinstate the 357 workers that were fired, more than 40% of Telam's worker force. The government of President Mauricio Macri launched a restructuring plan that the journalists in Telam say is promoting an ideological cleansing against colleagues that are critical with his administration.
I am a single parent. This was our only income. Now, more than 357 colleagues and I have to go look for a job because we are on the street.
Our correspondent in Buenos Aires, Edgardo Esteban, joined the march and brings us all the details.
A very important demonstration has been taking place here in Buenos Aires, organized by the workers of the state news agency Telam, to protest against the layoff of some 357 members of staff. Support for the movement was bigger than expected, with the participation of political and social groups, cultural figures, human rights organizations, as well as a large number of journalists. The aim was to press the Federal Office of Public Media into reversing what has happened and rehire the workers. This is a complex situation because the structure of Argentinian public media is being pulled apart. One of the country's most important journalistic outlets, Telam, is being most affected. Telam has protested against media monopolies since the 1950s. It now defends the rights of journalists. There are high expectations of what could happen in the coming days and what will happen in Parliament, where a law will be discussed to give control of the agency to all the national political parties.
Edgardo Esteban from Buenos Aires. Explosions at a small fireworks factory in Tultepec, a town in central Mexico, have killed at least 24 people, including one minor, and injured 49 others. 4 blasts ripped through the factory on Thursday afternoon, and helicopters took the wounded to several hospitals. Deadly firework explosions have been repeatedly reported in Tultepec, as the town produces around 25 tons of firecrackers each year.
I saw a fairly large mushroom cloud caused by the explosion. Later, there was another really loud explosion. Then we knew that the factory had exploded. Everyone we knew that worked there is fine, thank God. It's really scary, but luckily they're all fine.
The trial of 7 politicians and businessmen accused of taking bribes from Odebrecht begins in the Dominican Republic this Friday. The men, including several former senators and a former minister of public works, were arrested in May last year and charged with corruption. The case has triggered a series of protests organized by a movement called the Green March against what many Dominicans see as entrenched corruption in the country's political system. And corruption investigations in Peru, also linked to the Brazilian company Odebrecht, have ground to a halt after collaboration broke down between the judicial authorities in the two countries. Marcelo Odebrecht and Jorge Barata, senior managers of Odebrecht, announced they will not make any more declarations on the payment of bribes and the illicit financing for election campaigns in Peru, because the Peruvian justice system did not comply with their conditions. Members of the Congressional Commission investigating the case say it means the politicians and companies involved could go unpunished.
Who does this benefit? The Peruvian partners and the friends of the Peruvian partners who are linked directly or indirectly to Odebrecht. Those are the people who are happy now.
On Thursday, Venezuelans celebrated the 207th anniversary of their nation's independence. President Nicolás Maduro presided a commemoration act. He spoke about current international aggressions against Venezuela and asked the people and the Bolivarian National Armed Forces for their support to defeat the economic war and to achieve peace and stability in the country. President Nicolás Maduro also said that Venezuela will be forever free and never again a colony. He added that the independent spirit of Venezuela's liberators is still alive in the men and women of the Bolivarian Armed Forces.
207 años que se firmó el acta.
207 years ago, the act was signed, and it was declared that this land is free from empires and foreign powers. And 207 years later, our battle continues. A year ago, we were here, and I remember the pain that our people had. That people came with a smile. That people came with an applause, with their raised fist. The people that always fill this monumental square.
Ese pueblo amado. Ese pueblo que viene con su sonrisa.
Still in Venezuela, the government wants to create a new price system for the country to establish fair prices for basic services and products. We have the details in this report.
A visit to the Quinta Crespo market, one of the central and most crowded markets of Caracas, shows that the economic war is still affecting people.
Everything is very expensive everywhere, not only here.
You ask me, and I want to cry.
4,300 bolivares for a thigh. Can you imagine? Last time I bought it 2 weeks ago, it was 1,300 bolivares.
The visitors can see how the situation is.
I came to buy meat. The kilo costs 5,900 bolivares. It's too much.
That's not true, madam. I told you 5,200.
You just told me 5,900 for the kilo. Some put a price, some put another one, and we are the ones who pay it.
Cases of retirees like Luis happen every day.
Prices are too high. They said they increased our pensions, but they haven't paid us yet. And the next day, prices increased thousands of bolivares.
Outside the market, one can find speculators in spite of the interventions being made over there for 20 days. There are different reasons.
While Colombians prize bolivars like this, we are screwed, because they just want to see the government fall. I don't agree with this government, but they still want to bring it down without thinking about us.
This analyst says that Venezuela's distribution and trade system is perverted, monopolized, and controlled by oligarchy company groups. Control consumption and increase prices without balance. They coordinate with wholesale markets without economic arguments.
They distort the trade process by corporatizing it. For example, the Venezuelan food industry chamber is allied to transnationals such as Unilever and Kellogg's. All these international companies and producers then use mediators that create an underground factor that ends up benefiting this character that just emerged in Venezuela. The salesmen that charge tremendous prices because they're the final link in the chain, the so-called pachaqueros.
He warns that their final objective is to bring chaos and conflict to the country.
The chaos doctrine is the only one they use to create an implosive situation in Venezuela, so people get tired and feel that there's no government. Through price increases, which is not controlled by anyone, and by decreasing salaries, so people can't freely purchase, they try to bring chaos and lower people's motivation. They try to make people feel forsaken by the government.
That's why many think that there is no best option for Venezuela than keep trusting and supporting the revolution.
the people's will, and the National Constituent Assembly.
Now for the World Cup update. The quarterfinals are set to start today with two great matches. First, Uruguay will play against France. The French took the world title in 1998. Later, five-time World Cup champion Brazil will face Belgium. Thousands of Colombian football fans poured into the streets of Bogotá to welcome their national team as they returned from the World Cup in Russia. Supporters dressed in the national team colors of yellow, blue and red cheered them on the highway as they made their way to Campín Stadium. Fans were delighted to see their team and appreciated their World Cup performance. The players returned after they were defeated in a heart-stopping penalty shootout against England during the round of 16. We'll take one last short break, but join us after a video from our multimedia team.
Llevársela al gran reto que se le avecina, el Miss Universo 2018, España tiene...
Thanks for joining us again. A Thai diver involved in the rescue operation of the boys trapped in a cave has died. Rescuers have been exploring different ways to rescue the football team and their coach, with one option being to teach them how to scuba dive. But now the death of the diver raises many questions and concerns for the safety of the boys. The victim, Saman Kunont, was a former Navy officer and had volunteered to help in the rescue. He went into the cave with another diver when the water level was low. A sudden gush of water left him unconscious and he could not be revived.
He was on his way back after planting the oxygen bottles in the cave. Then he went unconscious. His diving buddy tried to give him first aid, but it was too late.
Now let's have a look at some other stories making headlines around the world.
At least 21 people have died and dozens are still missing after a tourist boat capsized in Phuket, Thailand. The boat was carrying more than 100 passengers, most of them Chinese tourists. The vessel sank as it hit the turbulent waters in the Andaman Sea on Thursday. Search and rescue operations are still ongoing.
After the accidents, China's Consulate General in Songkhla immediately activated its emergency response mechanism and sent personnel to the site. We urge Thailand's Navy, Marine Police, and other relevant departments to spare no efforts in the rescue.
United States Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is in Pyongyang and is believed to be working on the details of North Korea's denuclearization. His visit comes just a month after a historic meeting between US President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Trump is seeking the full commitment of Kim to maintain momentum towards implementing the agreement from the summit. Protesters in Nantes in France have burnt more than 50 cars and several buildings as riots continued for the third straight night following the killing of a young protester by police. Tensions have exploded in a city where residents have frequently complained about police brutality.
Spain celebrated its 2018 Gay Pride festivities in style, with people wearing stilettos, wedges and colorful costumes when they took part in a high-heel race through Madrid. People from all over the world flocked to the event using rolls of sticky tape to secure their shoes to their feet before running through Madrid's gay neighborhood of Chueca. Participants spoke of their joy to take part and the freedom to be as they want to be. And before we end our show, remember you can catch our special World Cup program with Argentina football star Diego Armando Maradona. De la mano del 10, the World Cup according to Maradona. It will air only on Telesur every night throughout the tournament in Russia. These are the times to watch it, so be sure to tune in. And with that, we come to the end of this news brief. But there's another stories, as you know, you can find on our website, telesurtv.net/English. And be sure to follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.